Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 4th, our very first product analytics group sync. Yay, yay. I have a wall of text, but there's definitely been some contributions from the rest of the team, so I'm happy to go through those. There are a couple of read-only items that you can read through at your leisure. Originally, I was going to start with a demo with the GK cluster, just kind of an end-to-end integration test of what we've done so far and the integration between GitLab and the stack itself. But currently, I will refresh one more time. Currently, it is still trying to find itself in terms of the DNS zones. So hopefully we will be able to get to that when we get to the show and tell section, and I can reorder that a little bit. But point being is that we're, as I've been saying this week, very close to basically connecting .com to what we would call the internal production cluster for the analytics stack. And so there's just a couple of items we have here on the agenda that I can share my screen so we can walk through together and then have others speak to their points that they've added to it. So one minor thing we have to do is just change how we connect the GitLab application to Jitsi. The dev kit uses a single image for both the configurator UI as well as the edge server that supplies like the library and receives the actual event requests. So that MR needs to be updated, and we'll probably rename the variable as well. And tangential or not, semi-related, the work that Rob will be doing with application settings that refers to these same setting via the UI will likely have to be updated there. Feel free to interrupt me if there's any questions or feedback as well. The next thing coming up would be making sure that we create the infrastructure production change issue so that they can, one, understand what we're doing, what they're integrating, and then actually detail the commands that they have to run on the Rails console to connect .com so that we can actually set this up for the internal handbook. But as we do that, this is the one thing I'm kind of wanting to get everyone's feedback on is probably it might be wise for us to start doing some internal communications as far as like the rollout for the internal handbook, so that's not catching anyone off guard. It's not a major concern from a legal standpoint since it's part of our general, I think, agreement with like terms of employment as far as like HR and legal are concerned. But I think it'd be good to like have some internal communication saying like, this is something we're going to start doing. Sam, I think you added the document here. I was curious your thoughts and everyone else's in terms of like, should we announce this before we kind of initiate the or create the infrastructure issue?
So we should definitely make some sort of internal communication before this goes live for sure. I'm thinking we need at least one calendar week before we push the button to start collecting data in the internal handbook, just to give everyone the chance to opine and have a discussion if needed. If we have a clear line of sight between this is when we're going to start making these infrastructure changes to this is what's going to happen next and it'll go live, I'm certainly okay if we want to make the announcement now to go alongside with some of these infrastructure changes so the infra team has the context as well as everyone else.
Right, and so that's kind of what I'm thinking of as well, is like it'd be good to point them to somewhere where they can see the context, see why we're doing this, and then have an issue to collect feedback and they can do that. So, I mean, it wouldn't take long for me to draft the actual production change issue itself. It's just more of, providing somewhere for them to understand what we're doing. So whether that's the draft document or whatever the document will be in its final form, as well as like an issue for them to like collect feedback there. So it's not just in the production issue itself. So
we do have a feedback issue ready to go as well, which
perfect.
is linked in that document.
Okay, awesome. Then I guess, would you need just kind of our review of the draft document before we
yeah, so the
publish?
placeholders that we would need to reconfirm before publishing it is what is the data we're going to be collecting just to make sure that it's correct still, and then timeline details for the when is this going to happen, because that's the really big to do, and that's the only one that I'm aware of that we haven't nailed down yet.
Yeah, I guess it's a chicken and egg problem of like when we know the dog fooding, it's like, well, when I guess we can show this without that part answered to to infrastructure, at least so they have the context and they have a place to leave feedback. And then once they kind of can confirm with us that they're good with it, then we can establish that timeline for when they can actually run the commands to connect the GitLab instance to our stack. Would that make sense then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this also doesn't have to be I don't think this needs to be so specific of it's going to be Tuesday at 3:48 p.m. If we want to put something around, right now we're working on getting the infrastructure changes pushed to production. We plan to let that settle, do whatever, and our estimate is it's going to be live a week after that, or something to that effect. I think that would be all right as well.
Yeah, I mean, barring any major, kind of requests from infrastructure to like make sure that they're comfortable integrating with the stack, I would like to target the end of October at the latest. So I think that's yeah. So maybe we can start with that, and then we can fine tune it if we have more insight into when we can actually, or if we can bring that in at all.
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and we can asynchronously get that document updated to kind of describe what the plan is then, and hopefully get it posted alongside those infrastructure changes in the near future.
Cool. Yeah, let's follow up on this async, and then let's yeah, very good, because I'd like to have that ready for infrastructure basically. Cool. Now, assuming that all goes well and we have the approval from infrastructure and we're able to connect to all of that, then we have the internal handbook merge request that Rob has already set up to actually start using the JS SDK to send events to. So once .com is connected and we can generate a JIT2 key, then we can plug that in and start collecting data for internal handbook. And that gives us real data to work with to build onto the dashboard foundation and widgets that we've been working on already. So I guess that's a good point at this time to turn it over to Axel and Rob to see if you want to share your a little bit on what you've been working on here.
One thing just to reiterate around the internal handbook instrumentation stuff is we will need an admin of the internal handbook to set up environment variables on their pages deploy. So then the key and URL that we have for production get applied to the Hugo process. That's noted in the RMR, and I think I've mentioned it elsewhere as well. So when we get close to that point, I'll get in contact with the internal handbook Slack channel. They've been very helpful so far, and we'll get that scheduled and prioritized.
Perfect. Thanks for the clarification there. So yeah, we'll definitely make sure so that it can pick up the host and key there from the environment variables. Cool. Axel, did you want to vocalize your point here for Dashboard Foundation?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dennis. So regarding the work we have been doing, Rob and I, with the dashboard, we created a feature flag, and this is basically like a placeholder issue that I created for the rollout. So I just wanted to bring that up so we can start using that issue to track whenever we want to start going live with the handbook project. And besides that, something that I didn't wrote down was an update regarding the progress of this work. Is that we have a green pipeline now after polishing and refining between Rob and I. So we are ready for reviews. So in fact, I believe the pipeline is just finished.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah. So
just to say, I'm happy to approve from a front end point of view, and then you'll need to get 2 back end reviews, and we'll have to get a front end maintainer. But I'm happy to approve as the front end counterpart initially.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Cool. I know there was also discussion slightly related to the foundational pieces for the dashboard. Did we pull navigation out of, excuse me, I'm getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. Did we want to talk, was the navigation pulled out at all for that merge request, or is that still included? Okay.
It's been pulled out. There's a separate issue that Axel set up, which would need to be handled. I mean, obviously the dashboard foundation, dashboard stuff doesn't need to be done for us to start getting data from the internal handbook. This is just stuff we need to get done to get customer facing, if that makes sense. But for that sort of to begin getting data would be super useful for all of us, I think, and stress testing the infrastructure, etc.
No, exactly. No, I don't think the navigation is critical yet until we start getting it as part of like the public customer preview, which will likely not happen until we have the CAB meetings, which we can get to in a moment. But cool. I just wanted to double check that. Thanks for clarifying. Rob, you have the next point.
Yeah, just to say that I had a great chat with Brandon from Optimize. Luckily worked with him in Manage before, and he's close friends with Jan, so I had an easy in to be able to start talking to the engineering manager. I got some great feedback, which I summarized in the dashboarding issue, and we've started implementing in Axel's MR by moving things to EE, and then my MR with the actual widget configuration system that we're creating.
Awesome. I guess what are next steps as far as like the work with Optimize at this point?
As soon as I have something worth seeing, I'm going to ping Brandon on my MR to start getting his feedback, and then he can put he's happy to pull in anyone from his team that he wants to get eyes on as well. My guess is initially, because they're going to be quite self-contained, there's not going to be much in the way of commentary, but there'll be stuff going on once these things start to make use. They are very, very keen to get this dashboard config into a YAML file, because that's the only time it actually makes sense and is usable for their team. But they, at least doing this gives them the ability to start making those widgets and trying those out before they get to that point. It just won't be usable as a MVC for them.
Right. Oh, that's exciting. I think some good first steps there as far as like collaboration with them. Yeah, very cool. Coming up as well, I guess I also missed onboarding, which is something we'll want to look at as well. But as far as admin settings, so again, if I can eventually get this demo working, there you'll see that all the configurations being done through the Rails console. So part of that is getting some admin settings so that we can actually plug that in and configure it from the product itself. But that would be coming after the dashboard foundation in terms of just improving the usability of connecting this and gets us closer to that customer public preview. So yeah, like that will be necessary. That Rob has already started some UI work on. So thanks for doing that. Anything you want to speak to that? Speak to at this point?
The UI is now ready to be developed, so it'd be great to get that assigned. I'm happy. If Axel, you were mentioning to me the other day that you were thinking you might be running out of stuff to do soon. So if you feel comfortable, I'd be more than happy for you to pick that up and start developing that alongside the dashboard work you've been doing, because we can't do the cube stuff until I've done the widget stuff. So I'm being a blocker on you at this point. And just to note that there is an enable product analytics checkbox, which is being split out because we don't have the settings for that yet. That's now a separate issue. So there's going to be two parts to this, but the checkbox is going to require back-end engineering know-how. So that's either going to be Max or myself, probably, whoever gets to that first. But that's a lower priority than just getting these UI settings in.
Yeah, we can definitely flex on that. Oh, go ahead, Axel.
No, sorry, Dennis. Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah, if no one has any objection, then yeah, I will be happy to pick that up.
Cool. The design's in the issue. And if you have any questions with I've written out a rough information plan, but if you have any questions, just let me know.
I will, yes.
I can't type, talk and unmute myself at the same time. I just wanted to add more detail to the onboarding section. So Rob already has created some great flow diagrams in terms of how this stack service is currently working. If I'm not mistaken, we don't have any triggers yet in terms of how that actually activates. I just killed mosquitoes, so I'm very proud of myself. So yeah, we would also need to be able to actually trigger the connection to like basically get that Jitsi key whenever we want to enable it for the Jitsi service. And so I think that's another part of the onboarding flow, which Rob's into. already have been working with Figma, I would assume naturally you'd move on to that at some point once you're done with the dashboarding aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. I've linked to these flow diagrams underneath. I've been enjoying them far more than Mermaid, just from a visual perspective. They are a lot more distinct and super easy to do. Just copy paste. They're brilliant. Whereas Mermaid can get a bit fiddly at times.
Nice.
Yeah, my next aim, taking that flow diagram with the rough idea of how it would all work, I'm going to start trying to mock up some rough UI. So expect to hear from me, Sam, quite extensively, because I'm not a designer, but I'm going to do my best. And is also why I don't really have time to take on the admin settings and stuff, because as you say, as soon as I get through this widgets, that's my second focus. Because then once I've mocked those up and got those into some issues, then me and Axel and Jan are going to be busy for a little while, because there's going to be quite a few things to create.
For sure. No, sounds good. Sounds exciting. So yeah, definitely a lot of things to kind of help polish and get us to that public preview. But yeah, as we of course focus for the short term in terms of just collecting data on internal handbook and getting those dashboard widgets going, yeah, that's a little bit further out for sure. But plenty to look forward to. Cool. So I'm still waiting. Also, Zoom is really messing with my mouse focus, so I apologize for all the flipping windows. I had a couple questions that have kind of come up as I was testing this from end to end. I promised it did work at one point. But the content security policy, so the internal handbook looks like it both uses unpackaged and then now JS Deliver, the content delivery network. I guess, Rob, you have a point to this. But I had some instructions. So development kit, merge requests, yes. So my previous instructions on the dev kit involved changing the GitLab YAML file, which is not recommended because that gets automatically recreated every time you run reconfigure. So I do have a merge request here to actually make that option configurable. I just need to see that through. That said, that is what's going to allow us to at least define the content security policy or disable it so it can work with how we're using the JS SDK where it's hosted for on the various CDNs, but we will need to also update that on .com because that does have a very strict content security policy to make sure that when we do enable this on the GitLab project within GitLab org, the last thing we want to do is have a bunch of bad requests because the content security policy isn't allowing us to download the JS SDK. So good call out there, Max, for the GDK. I will actually do that right now.
I don't foresee the CSP being a particular issue, though, for an externally loaded JavaScript file.
No,
it's like
it's something to consider, but I don't think it'll be a problem.
And if anything, your MR2 disable CSP, I doubt that will get acceptance from the GTK developers. They will rather see us do what they did with Snowplow, where when Snowplow was enabled, it gets appended to CSP. We shouldn't. I don't see. We don't have any other issues with other external scripts. Fingers crossed we'll be okay with it. The one point that makes me question is if we start connecting to a local copy of the SDK for development, rather than pointing to a published version, connecting to your local instance instead. That's where things might get a bit iffy.
Yeah, well, I mean, so they have this long-standing issue to like move anything that is configurable in the GitLab YAML to something that you can flip on and off. So I feel like this is in line with that. But I understand that like if it was brand new setting in terms of just completely disabling it, that would make sense. But yeah, I just wonder if that gets trickier if we have to like keep modifying how we extend the CSP locally if we do want to reference it locally. But yeah, I guess we can push the
We
MR
don't
and
have
see
to
it.
modify the CSP when we're editing the GitLab UI locally. So, but then again, that's using ES modules.
But
I don't know.
But if I need to connect externally to step like, yeah, if I need to connect externally, then I run into issues with GK. Yeah, I guess it depends. But yeah, there's a couple of configurations where this kind of becomes more annoying.
CSP.
That's why it might be useful in some cases to turn it off, but default is still enabled, which is in the merge request. So maybe we can take that discussion in the merge request. We're actually running low on time, and so there was another question about we had a environment variable that puts cube in dev mode, which makes it public, adds the developer playground and things like that. Max, you point the changes already in the documentation. That said, I guess we would need to confirm. I don't know if you've done this yet, Max. No pressure otherwise, but we just need to make sure that GitLab is still able to talk to Cube correctly when we move that environment variable.
Yeah, I'm going to check this out this afternoon. I'm pretty sure, based on the documentation, that all it does is restrict access to the configuration endpoint. I'd be very, very surprised if it changes the port number at that point. But it's on my list to check today, so I'll let you know before I finish.
Got it. Yep, cool. We can follow up on that next time. Cool. There was this kind of topic of priority alignment, but I think I've met with most everyone at this point, and it seems like we've got plenty of work to kind of chase after, at least until the next time we meet. So that was kind of my question for this point was going to be: does everyone have kind of a clear view of what they're going to be working on in the short term? Please feel free to say if you don't. We can figure that out. But seems like otherwise we can just move into show and tell. Rob, if you'd like to start things off.
Sure. It's not really a show and tell, but I'm happy to show. Anyway, so just pointing out that I have, as mentioned already, I've been creating these in Figma. This one is feel free to use them with other people outside, or in the case of the cab, if it's useful, Sam, you're more than welcome to use them when trying to explain the process, especially if they're a bit more technical. So this is, for instance, too zoomy. This one, for instance, is the quick one I recently, which Max hasn't seen and probably argue against at some point. I've done something wrong.
No,
probably.
I saw it earlier and I went, Rob has succinctly combined my spaghetti code into a pretty diagram, so thank you.
Oh, well, that's all right then. That just generally explains how the stack system works, which then ties into this one, which is what the flow diagram, the onboarding flow is supposed to do, which is actually mentioned as an analytics stack setup service. So it's just because we're dealing with very abstract sometimes things, it's quite useful to have that visual aid to help break down how it all is meant to flow together, at least for me. So if you don't have a Figma account, I highly recommend creating one and having a play. You just use a FigJam file and they come pre-configured with a bunch of flowchart elements. You just drag and drop and have a fun playtime.
Awesome. We'll have to take a look at that. Yeah, the cluster, I've done something wrong. This is what happens when I play with it before the demo. So I will record a video and I will send it out and post it in the Slack channel when I am able to get it sorted. So I was trying to mess around with TLS certificates and I'm now paying the price. Cool. Let's see here. So as far as what's left on the agenda, Sam, you have the cab.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the customer advisory board that's going to be happening next week. We have these periodically, I think every quarter is the goal, and it's usually a 2.5 hour long session. I will be leading a 30-minute discussion about product analytics. What's interesting about this is people have self-selected if they want to attend product analytics as opposed to a different session. How I'm planning on leading that is in two parts, about 15 minutes to talk about what they're doing today, either with other vendors or building something themselves, and then using the second half to talk about what GitLab's vision is, what we're doing in the space to get feedback. If you have any specific topics or questions you'd like me to steer those discussion to, please let me know. And I'm happy to try and work those into the conversation. These sessions are recorded generally, so I'll be sure to share that recording once the session's been completed. Max, to your point, I definitely think it'll be good to have engineering representation there. Both Dennis and maybe Tim will be there, as well as myself and a few other GitLab folks. So we should have at least 4 GitLab folks in the room. I'm a little bit hesitant to bring more people in case the attendees feel overwhelmed with, 20 GitLabbers for 3 customers. So I think we're probably at a good number there.
Sounds good. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't you alone. Not that that would have been a bad thing, but it's always good to have other folks in the room too.
Yeah, for sure.
Sam, do you know exactly when in that 2.5 hour window that our product analytics is going to be up, just so I can make sure I'm available?
Not off the top of my head, but it is in the customer advisory board issue.
Okay. I
So
just wasn't sure if they're
drop
going to
a link
put
to the
together like an
issue, and then
official
we can
order
dig
schedule.
around.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
I think it's an hour into that, like halfway. Oh, it's 40 minutes in. So I think that'll put us right around 11:40 Eastern time.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah, I think just towards the tail end it starts. I think it's like past midnight or something like that, which is
Yeah, that might be.
doable,
That's
but
probably
not
too
bad
late for a
idea.
meeting for you.
Yeah. But no, that should be fine. Cool. I've done a last ditch effort to restart some of these deployments. They are not responding, so I will record the typo another time. Thanks for dealing with that. And we're at the end of, and we're almost at time, and we're at the final point anyways. Any questions, any feedback, any thoughts? Anyone else? Sorry. Is there anything else anyone would like to share?
I had one thing I'd like to find out from that Cab is how what sort of events do they track, and how do they consume that data? Like is it just they're going to Google Analytics and looking at the charts, or are they actually doing anything more detailed and linking in with other behavioral analytics or business analytics type scenarios? Because that'd be useful from our point of view. To make sure that we're rendering the right kind of data for them in the right ways.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be sure to bring that up with them then. Thanks for the question.
Cool. Anything else? All right, then thanks for everyone for sharing, added to the agenda. It's good to see everyone. And here's to many more product analytics group syncs. Have a good rest of your days and weeks, and enjoy Family and Friends Day, and see you all next time.
Ciao.
See you, folks.
Bye.